Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Welcome back to Just Relationships. If you listened to our show last week, you know that we did part one of a special series with Sylvie Heyman, who wrote the book called Beyond the Holocaust. Her experiences as an immigrant and her search for identity. And in last week's show, we talked about Sylvie's life, how as a baby, as 2-year-old, living in Belgium, when Hitler bombarded Belgium, how her family left. They were able to get out of Belgium, to go to France, to go to Portugal, to go to Brazil, to go to Argentina, and to finally get to the United States when she was 14 years old. So we talked about that legacy, Sylvie, and we talked about how you had survivor's guilt. And in that day and age, not only in 1945, when the war was over, did nobody talk about the war. They were, as you were saying last week, they didn't want to remember the horrors. They wanted to live in present time and have a life. But and as I was saying, the idea of my trauma, when I had open heart surgery a while ago, I talked about it and I cried about it. So how people managed in that time to deal with it is beyond the beyond the Holocaust, beyond the beyond. And you had survivor guilt. And because of that milieu, you were not able, you didn't even think to talk about it. And you might not even have identified it as you do now, called, as we now know the term, survivor guilt. But as a result, you went inward and you actually hurt yourself. You picked at your feet and your hands to the point of rawness and bleeding. And that was how you dealt with the tension that you felt inside from the emotional pain. And as we know today, people who do self-harm do it for a very real reason. And that, believe it or not, the physical pain is distracting from the emotional pain. It's actually less painful. And this is a message that we all should be very aware of, how painful actually emotional pain is. That physical pain is actually better than emotional pain. So whatever you want to talk about now, Sylvie, how did you come to deal with your survivor guilt?
It's a very good question. I'm not even sure exactly when I was able to talk about it. It went gradually. But I can tell you that had I known that writing the book was something that became cathartic, but not at first. At first, it was my experiences were so deeply hidden into my psyche that I wasn't aware at all that I had any kind of conflict going on. I suppose it could have showed up in ways that perhaps a professional such as yourself might have caught it, might have said, you reacted this way to that film about World War II. Everybody squirms in their seat, but the way you reacted, Sylvie, I don't know. Can you talk about it? If you had been in my life, that would have been so good because I would have been able to open up, but I didn't even know. So the thing is, it was repressed, and I did not want to put it on paper. When my son asked, that was one thing. When your granddaughter, and she was no longer a little girl, she was a mature woman. She was living with us in the city for just a short while until her apartment was ready. And we had a wonderful opportunity to get to know each other better. Perry said to me, Nana, you really have to write about that. And then I took it seriously. And I had written articles when I was a nurse, clinical articles for peer-reviewed nursing journals. You can't call that really writing. It's kind of reporting. So I was comfortable with that. But to write, she urged me, and I thought about it, and I said, there's not that many people who has firsthand experience that they can talk about regarding World War II. So maybe I should. I did, and it was not easy. It was not an easy thing to do because I had to probe and I get in there and I thought, I don't think I want to remember some of this, but I had to remember. And, it really eventually did become cathartic, and it felt better to be able to put. And also, Duffy, I really felt that I had a message. And the message is not so much about what went on in the war, because what does that mean to us today when you never know today, but it's certainly, we are very much distanced from the time of World War II. But the consequences of moving to another country where you don't know the language, where maybe you're not getting too much parental support, maybe you're feeling alone in a huge country that you don't know what people are saying to you and how you can communicate to them. And you're a teenager. You've got feelings. You look at a boy, you like him, you feel a little sweaty and hot, and you have nobody to talk to because mom wasn't interested in hearing that. So that was very traumatic, the period after. And I want this book more to be about the refugee, like the refugees that are coming in now to our country and other countries, the teens. It's not just about the acute state of do you have a home? Do you have food? Do you have diapers for the baby? All these very, very basic needs. It's about emotional needs, about feeling of belonging. So in the second part of the book, I express that a little bit more and use researchers and psychologists, their theories to substantiate how I felt, to give me credibility for how I felt. And it was really very rewarding to do that.
Yes, I appreciated how you brought in information for yourself to understand and for the reader to understand. And I like how you put that, not though you didn't have the acute state of the refugee as we think about, who is homeless and doesn't have their basic needs met, food, clothing, shelter, water, that you did not have a feeling of belonging. And your parents were, I guess, remote in certain ways, or maybe they were beleaguered, whatever, and you were an only child.
Correct.
How did you manage that?
Well, in all respect to my mother was the youngest of her whole family, and very spoiled. And I mean, they all adored her. And she was with her family even when she was married. This was her, umbilical tie. And it was very difficult for her to suddenly go through a war with her husband. But, and as a family, we had to we started out together as a family, her sisters and brothers. But then you couldn't walk around like that with a caravan as in the war, because you would be conspicuous. So we had to split out. And besides, they were starting to fight as to what they should be doing. So I feel very badly for what my mother went through. My father, even though he was very strict with me, and maybe another child might have remembered the dark moments of my father, but I always remember his suffering. I mean, he actually left Germany to go to Belgium to make a living, meets my mother, falls in love, gets married, has a child, and in the meantime, war takes place, and he can't get back to Germany. And his mother, who he adored, his mother, his sister, her two children, her husband, he's leaving them behind. He never realized that. So I tell you the truth, being that you're a psychologist, I think that I often wondered, and I think I did put that in the book, was he sorry that he had me? I mean, because if he hadn't, he could have gone back and be with his family. So there was always that thought about, he lost the people he loved so deeply, and it made him crazy in so many ways, paranoid, and it was really difficult. And I felt his pain. I always felt his pain, even as a little girl.
Oh my goodness, Sylvie, you explained that so well. That kind of incredible loss and feeling stuck. I mean, moving from Germany to Belgium and to work, and then for his love, his beloved, and having you in Belgium, but having to leave his entire family in Germany and not being able to go back. You talk about your father really never getting over it and having melancholy most of his life, all of his life. Mm-hmm. And I just interviewed, and oh my goodness, I feel so badly, wonderful author of a book called Emotional Inheritance. Oh. And I recommend you read it. I recommend our listeners read it, and about the intergenerational trauma and how it actually it changes the DNA. And the whole field of epigenetics, how the environment, the experiences alters our DNA. And then the next generation inherits the new DNA. Mm-hmm. But the flip side, the good side of it is that the environment can change our DNA for the better. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when I interview you on your book, Make It a Habit, about the formation of good habits, we can both remember to talk about that, because the formation of good habits can actually alter your DNA for the better, for not only yourself, but future generations. So it is astounding. But I think, and for you to read Emotional Inheritance would be a wonderful thing. I was so taken by the book because it's really about how families keep secrets, and they think that if they don't talk about it to the next generation, they will exempt them from the pain. But that's not how it works. As you just said, children pick it up. So you picked up your father's melancholy and his lifelong grief at not being able to see his mother again and not seeing his family again. So tell us more. Were your father's people murdered in the Holocaust?
Yes, we did see. Actually, we went to Van Hafshan in Israel, and we did find evidence of her name, his mother's name. I was not with my parents at the time, and I'm happy, because I don't know how my father would have reacted. But it was a very, very painful, and I could feel that pain. I would cry with him. I would feel that pain. Yes. You
would cry with him? Would he cry?
Yeah, he would cry. He would cry.
Cry.
Sometimes I'd find him crying. I didn't put that. I'd find him crying. And there was rage. There was uncontrollable temper tantrums and uncontrollable behavior. But I think he was just lashing out because of the pain that he was going through. That, because he wasn't talking about it to anyone, just stayed there and fermented forever. So it was difficult being the daughter of parents who went through that journey.
Yes, you were the daughter of a Holocaust survivor.
Well, again, depending upon how you wish to define that. In my eyes, I had sort of a compartmentalized way of looking at that. That if you were in a camp or hidden, or you went through all these, but we sailed through. I mean, he wasn't sailing through. It was difficult. And I talk about that through our voyage out of Europe, but not nearly what it was for people who never had a chance to get out. We had a chance to get out.
Right. No, I completely get that. And as you had said in the last show, that you are a survivor of World War II. And you put it, not the Holocaust per se, but your father was. I mean, his family was murdered.
I think so.
In the Holocaust. And I'm sure you've read some of the literature on children of the Holocaust survivors.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so the incredible impact. So what we were up to in last week's show was you coming to the States at the age of 14 and looking at, as a teenager, how difficult that was anyway. And then in a new country, all alone, only child, your parents were remote in certain ways. Your father was in grief, untreated grief. So tell us what else it was like, Sylvie.
My mother came from a very large family, and I love to hear about her family because it's so foreign to me. I'm an only child, and she was one of 14. So my mother, being estranged from her family, is another part that I saw in her, even as I was growing up. I saw her anguish. I saw her tears and her loneliness and longing to be with family. And once we came to the United States, now she was with her family. And I really don't befault her for that. She hadn't seen them in 12 years. She was so close to her sisters, and especially the sister, her just immediate older sister. They were like twins. And so what happened is we came to the States. My father was a bit delayed because he had a German quota and he couldn't come with us. We had a Belgian quota, so we came. And my mother just spent all her time with her sister Netta and would come home in the afternoon happy to be with family. And meanwhile, hello,
I'm here.
How was school? Oh no, how was school? I mean, I hope you learned something. Those questions didn't come up. No, those questions didn't come up. And it's not because she was a loving. I could feel her soft hands on my, and she would actually kind of like rub my head a little bit, called it koppet bekabe. That's a Dutch kind of a thing. And I there's a wonderful memories of a loving mother. But she was in her very young. She was barely 30 or something. And she missed her family and she missed her sister. So she went, and not realizing that here I am, lonely and alone. That's two different things, lonely and alone, right?
Right.
And I just decided that, I thrusted myself into my studies, and I did contemplate suicide at a time, but I said, no, I don't think that that's the solution. So I didn't, and thank God I did not. But it was a struggle just to be, not every refugee who comes to the new country has that situation. Some come from a very, very big family where they don't even get out of their own family structure to know what the new country is about. I did not have that. So as a result, I thrusted myself into studies, and that's where I put all my effort to become a good student and just go through life as best as I could, productive, constructive, and grateful.
Wow, productive, constructive, and grateful. Yes, you could have gone either way, but I like how you thrusted yourself into your studies, and you had that. Your parents loved you, but they were preoccupied. They were not emotionally present to you. You figured out a way, and here you became a professional yourself, very well educated. So tell us about language. You talk a great deal about language in your autobiography.
Yeah, I did. And thank you for bringing that up, because to me, that is very important. And to me, I think is the crux of the book. It's so much so that I contacted I Googled and contacted someone who is an expert and a researcher in the field of languages. She comes from South Africa. She's in Canada. And I just found the name. I liked everything I read about this. She was a researcher and a teacher, and I contacted her and I asked her if she would review my book because it has so much about language.
Yes.
She responded, absolutely, I will, but you will have to send me the whole manuscript because I will have to read the whole manuscript, which I thought was great because a lot of people, and I've had that experience, you send them the book to review it, they don't have the time really. They just read the first that's why the first pages of a book is so important. They read it and they say, okay, this is not for me. But she read the whole book, and she saw the struggle with the language, and she was very, very interested in seeing and reading and hearing about it. So she gave me a wonderful review of the book, which was very, very rewarding for me. But yeah, it was a struggle. And people thought, oh, she's got such a cute accent. And I didn't want to have an accent. I was trying very hard and not to have it. I would sit hours on end in front of the mirror and go through the R's. The R is very difficult in foreign language because you have the that comes from the side. You have the radio. Radio was the word that I was, I would say radio. No, radio, until I got the rolling R.
Wow.
And I didn't want to say radio because that's Spanish. No, that's in the tip of the tongue. So all by myself.
Oh my goodness. All by yourself.
You would think that I would become someone who specializes in speech, right? A speech therapist because of the work that I did. Well, I did.
That's interesting. Yes. So the way we language is the way we think, or vice versa. Like the Eskimos have so many different words for snow. We have like 2, slush and yellow snow. And so our language shapes how we see the world. So here you speak multiple languages now. You speak Spanish and French. Mm-hmm. And what else besides English, of course?
My father did not. My father spoke German. He was and he did not have a gift for languages. My mother did, but he did not. And he refused. He refused to talk to me in German. He had to talk to my mother in German because otherwise they wouldn't communicate.
Wow.
But he refused. So, and I would try to understand. I actually started to understand.
Yes.
But he would not allow me to learn the German. He was so hurt by what Germany had done to him. It wasn't really Germany; it was Hitler. But that's how he was so rejected as a German, which is
right.
So yeah.
Wow, I can completely understand that.
And for the DNA, I think that a lot of the suffering that my father did, that was transferred to me. Even though I did not lose my mom there, I did not lose my dad there.
Right.
But that was transferred to me.
It absolutely was. And that's why I recommended emotional inheritance to you and our listeners. Mm-hmm. You try to not have an accent, but you have a delightful accent. We like certain accents and we don't like others. We like the French accent. We like the English accent if it's not Cockney. Right. We can like an Irish brogue even, but we don't like the Brooklyn accent. We don't like the Bronx accent, the Queens accent, the New York accent, because there is classism involved.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, who is more educated? And I know for me, I'm also self-taught with language. I just somehow pictured myself in a larger world and needing to speak standard English. So I also am self-taught about trying to remove some of my New York accent, which I know I have, but not as pronounced because I've worked on it.
Right. Yes.
So what's this? So we have only a few minutes left. So tell us about your search for identity.
That is the question. For me, that's the question of my life. Yeah, I had a lot of difficulties because I could not fit into anything. I wasn't in Argentina anymore. I had an accent. People asked me where I was from. I didn't want to talk about that. I wanted to be recognized as an American. I couldn't wait because I loved America. I mean, it's a beautiful country, and going to America was like a miracle. And yet I got there and I was so miserable. And I didn't feel like I could fit in, that I could be understood. So language became then I became interested in more than just my experience. I wanted to know what experts have to say about language in general. And I did the research, and that reflected itself in that book. And I understood a lot better how I felt. But to the day of today, I mean, I know people who have, a similar kind of background with other countries, and yet they speak with less of an accent than I do. And I don't know why that is, because I tried very hard. And I did not come to this country at a time when they have English as a special language, ESL teachers. We didn't have that, came much later. So I think that helped a lot of youngsters, but it didn't help me. So, and people sometimes laugh, but they don't laugh at you. They laugh, oh, how cute. And she said that, so cute. Did you hear what she said? So cute. Well, I don't like that. It made me feel awful. And I would just smile because they were nice. They weren't trying to hurt me, but I felt awful. And I would go home and try to practice a little bit more. So language was really a big thing, a big problem.
So we have just a minute left, Sylvie. What would you like to leave us with?
I think what I'd like our readers or listeners is to understand that it's not just the acute stage of being a refugee that matters. That does matter. You do have to help. You do have to provide them with food like Highest Does and other organizations. But a year or two later, they're let out there and, on their own. And there are so much more struggles that teenage and young adult have in a world that they don't feel it's their world. And I would like people to be more understanding that when a kid is from another country, that they have a lot more than just language to worry about. There's customs and things that it's difficult for that child to make the transition. And I'd like people to be more sensitive to that.
You'd like people to be more sensitive, absolutely. And boy, do we need to be sensitive to immigrants and to refugees. And boy, do we need that. Wow. My hat's off to you, Sylvie Heyman. I am honored to call you friend. And I am so pleased that you wrote this book and that you are giving me an interview on your book, Beyond the Holocaust. An Immigrant's Search for Identity by Sylvie Heyman, Heyman, and you can get it just about everywhere. And you won a Reader's Favorite 5 stars, Reader's Favorite 5-star award for your book.
I have, yes.
Yes. Well, as I've said before, I read it like a novel. I found it absolutely fascinating. And the way you go through the history of the world and you in it and all your different countries. And you did a beautiful job, Sylvie. So you added to the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, you're welcome. Thank you so much. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.